Welcome to the Economist Word Spotlight.
It's great to be here.
Have you ever noticed how some words just perfectly capture a complex situation, especially, when we're talking about these huge, ambitious projects?
Absolutely. We hear about the breakthroughs, the innovations.
Right, but the language used to describe the journey itself, the ups, the downs, the delays that can be just as revealing.
It really can. The specific words chosen often tell a deeper story.
Exactly. So today, we're going to unpack some key terms that really bring that story to life.
Sounds good.
Our focus is an intriguing article from The Economist titled "A Successful Test Flight Puts Musk's Starship Back on Track," published August 27th, 2025.
Ah, yes. A very interesting piece on SpaceX.
It really is, and it gives us a fantastic chance to sharpen our understanding of the nuances, particularly in business and tech reporting.
That's right. For those of you looking to quickly grasp the core insights, those aha moments from sources like The Economist, understanding the precise meaning and the context of specific vocabulary is just crucial. So we'll be breaking down 6 words from this piece. We'll show you not just what they mean, but why they matter in this particular story, and maybe beyond.
Giving you a clearer lens, sort of, to view these complex narratives.
Precisely.
Okay, let's jump right in with our first word. The article states, ever since it was founded in 2002, SpaceX has been a proponent of the fail fast, learn fast school of engineering. Proponent.
Yeah, I was really struck by that phrase, fail fast, learn fast. What does it mean for SpaceX to be a proponent of that? Well, proponent here is key. It basically means someone who actively supports or advocates for a particular idea or plan.
So not just someone who agrees with it, but actively pushes for it.
Exactly. In this context, it highlights that SpaceX doesn't just, tolerate failure. They actively champion it. They see it as a core part of their engineering philosophy.
Wow.
It's a deliberate method for them to make rapid progress. So instead of seeing a failed test as just a setback,
They see it as data.
rich data gathering, exactly.
Yeah.
Crucial for the next iteration.
So it's more than just accepting mistakes. It's almost like they think mistakes are, necessary fuel for innovation.
That's a good way to put it.
It feels like a bold stance, though, especially in aerospace where failures can be very visible and expensive.
Extremely visible, yes.
Yeah.
And it's certainly not unique to SpaceX, this idea, but they've really popularized it on a massive scale, particularly for hardware as complex as rockets.
Right.
The article points out that being a proponent means they don't just endure stumbling, they kind of build it into their process. They expect it.
They expect to stumble.
As part of the learning curve, yes. Which is quite different from a more traditional, maybe more risk-averse engineering approach, where the goal is to eliminate all failure up front.
Okay, I see. So the opposite would be?
An opponent or a critic, someone who disagrees or resists the idea, they might argue it's reckless or inefficient.
Like, opponents of a new building project might argue it harms the environment, focusing on the downsides.
Precisely. They'd be pushing back against the plan,
Yeah.
not championing it.
Got it. Okay, embracing fail fast also leads us nicely to the next word. The article adds, and the past few months have seen some particularly spectacular failures.
Ah, spectacular.
Spectacular failures. That almost sounds contradictory, doesn't it? What does The Economist mean using such a vivid word for something that isn't a success?
It is an interesting choice, isn't it? Because spectacular usually implies something magnificent, maybe impressive in a good way.
Right, like a spectacular view.
Exactly. But here, it's describing failures that are, dramatic, visually striking. They grab a lot of attention.
Okay.
SpaceX rocket tests, when they fail, they don't often fail quietly. It's often what they euphemistically call a rapid unscheduled disassembly.
Which means it blows up.
Pretty much, yes. So
Right.
these aren't just small technical issues. They become global news events because of their scale and, frankly, the visual intensity.
So spectacular isn't just descriptive, it also conveys the sheer scale and the public visibility of these things.
Yes.
It's less about celebrating the failure itself and more about acknowledging its undeniable impact, how it draws everyone's eyes.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It suggests that even in failure, there's this undeniable, almost cinematic quality to what SpaceX is doing. It's not just a rocket having a bad day, it's a spectacle. And you could argue that for a company like SpaceX, which relies quite heavily on public interest and media attention.
Right, to keep the momentum going.
Exactly. Even these dramatic failures kind of contribute to the narrative. This narrative of groundbreaking, maybe risky, but definitely ambitious innovation.
Interesting. So it stands in contrast to what, an ordinary failure?
Or dull, yes. Something that might happen unnoticed in a lab somewhere. It lacks that public excitement or visual punch.
So the article implies that while these failures are costly, their spectacular nature, kind of ironically, keeps the public engaged.
It certainly keeps them aware of the ambitious goals, yes.
Yeah. Okay. From those very public events, the article then shifts focus a bit to the nuts and bolts of testing. It says, the troublesome upper stage made it into space, where it deployed 8 dummy satellites and demonstrated that it could restart its engines, both important milestones.
Right. Dummy satellites.
Dummy satellites. We hear that term sometimes. What exactly does dummy imply here? Are they like toy versions, or is it more complex?
It's quite specific in this context. Dummy here, used as an adjective, means something made to resemble or act as a substitute for the real thing, usually for practice or, like here, testing.
Okay.
So these dummy satellites aren't functional. They're essentially stand-ins. They likely have the correct mass, maybe the right size.
But not the expensive working parts inside.
Exactly. They don't carry the costly, sensitive equipment of actual operational satellites that you'd launch for, say, communication or science.
Ah, so they're like placeholders. They let SpaceX test the deployment mechanism, the pushing out part?
Yes. The physical separation, the trajectory after separation, how the rocket structure handles it, all without the huge cost and risk of using actual valuable satellites.
It's like a dress rehearsal before the big show.
That's a great analogy.
It seems like a smart way to de-risk a really critical part of the mission. You prove the system works before you load it up with the real deal.
Precisely. This iterative testing, using dummy payloads, lets engineers gather crucial data on how the whole system behaves during deployment.
So when they launch the real or genuine satellites,
The hope is the process is as smooth and tested as possible. Imagine the cost if that deployment system failed with a multi-million-dollar satellite instead of a, carefully weighted replica.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It shows a methodical approach.
Mitigating risk and cost at each step.
Okay. Speaking of cost and critical phases, the article moves to something absolutely fundamental for space travel. SpaceX plans to solve that problem by refueling in orbit from other rockets sent up with cargo bays full of extra propellant.
Propellant, yes. Crucial.
We know it's basically rocket fuel, but this idea of refueling in orbit, it just suggests a scale of ambition that's, well, mind-boggling. What more does propellant signify here, especially for deep space stuff?
Well, propellant is the lifeblood, as you say. Typically, it's a mix of fuel and an oxidizer. When they burn, they create the thrust.
Right.
For Starship, though, the word really highlights a central challenge. To get to the moon, or especially Mars, it needs way more propellant than it can possibly lift off Earth in one go.
Okay, the tank isn't big enough for the whole trip.
Not even close for Mars.
Yeah.
So that's where orbital refueling comes in. The article emphasizes this extra propellant from tanker rockets isn't just like a nice to have. It's an absolute necessity to get Starship beyond Earth orbit.
Wow. This is where it gets incredibly complex, isn't it, for the future of space exploration?
Absolutely.
It's not just having enough fuel. It's the massive engineering task of transferring that fuel between 2 spacecraft whizzing around in orbit.
In zero gravity, yes.
The logistics, the precision needed, the sheer number of launches just to get enough propellant up there to a sort of space gas station. It sounds like sci-fi.
It does. But it's fundamental to SpaceX's plans.
Yeah.
It really elevates propellant from just fuel to a core strategic resource for interplanetary travel. And the technical hurdles are immense. You've got rendezvous and docking, transferring cryogenic liquids in zero-G, managing heat, preventing leaks.
So each tanker launch carrying propellant is a whole complex mission itself.
It is. The article really underscores that Starship's big goals depend entirely on mastering this refueling process. It distinguishes propellant, the active stuff providing thrust from, say, inert material or just non-fuel cargo.
Right, stuff that's just along for the ride.
Exactly. It's a challenge that, if they solve it, could fundamentally change the economics and the feasibility of really ambitious deep space missions.
Well, that vision of Martian colonies certainly requires a lot of propellant and maybe an almost unwavering optimism. Which brings us neatly to our next word, describing a particular outlook. The long road ahead highlights another feature of SpaceX's corporate culture: rosy timelines.
Rosy timelines. Yes, a classic.
I think many of us have experienced this in projects, right? Where optimism maybe runs ahead of reality. What does rosy specifically imply for SpaceX's schedules?
Well, rosy generally means overly optimistic, maybe hopeful to the point of being unrealistic, especially about future outcomes.
Okay.
So in this context, it's describing the timelines Elon Musk and SpaceX often announce for their really big goals. Mars, the moon. They tend to be very aggressive.
They sound exciting.
They do. They sound more maybe cheerful and aspirational than strictly grounded in the practical difficulties and the inevitable unknowns of developing something so complex. It seems to be a hallmark of their vision-driven culture.
I can definitely relate to that. Rosy timelines, I think we've all been there. Maybe a home renovation or a work deadline.
Okay.
We think, oh, that'll be quick, and then
Yeah.
it's not.
Months later.
Exactly. But for SpaceX, these aren't just minor personal projects. They're multi-billion-dollar efforts. Does the article suggest these rosy timelines are purely wishful thinking? Or is there maybe a strategic element? Setting ambitious goals.
The article seems to suggest a bit of both, really.
Yeah.
While these timelines often aren't met, let's be honest,
Right.
they probably serve multiple purposes. They can inspire the teams, attract talented people, maintain a sense of urgency. They signal this absolute commitment to pushing the boundaries, but it also acknowledges how hard it is to actually hit them. The contrast with a gloomy or pessimistic outlook is really stark.
How so?
Well, a gloomy forecast might predict constant delays, cost overruns, maybe even failure. A rosy timeline focuses on the bold when, maybe glossing over the how hard.
So it highlights a leadership style, prioritizing the big vision over conservative planning.
That seems to be the implication.
Yeah.
It creates this constant tension between, aspiration and execution.
And often, that tension leads directly to our final word. It often goes hand in hand with rosy timelines. The article says, if the timelines are sleeping, though, SpaceX's ambitions are not.
Slipping.
It sounds so gentle, doesn't it? For what can be a pretty big deal in project management, what does slipping really convey here in the context of SpaceX's huge plans?
Yeah, slipping, uses a verb here, well, present participle, means falling behind schedule, being delayed, gradually moving away from the planned target or date.
Okay.
For SpaceX, it refers to those timelines for Mars and the Moon getting pushed back beyond the original, often rosy schedules.
Right.
The article captures that key dynamic. The huge ambition remains totally unchanged, but the calendar, that's proving to be less flexible than the vision.
So it's not like a sudden stop, but more a subtle, gradual drift off course from the plan.
That's a good way to think about it.
It illustrates that while the dream rockets are still aiming high in theory, the reality of development means the progress bar is kind of quietly falling behind schedule.
Yes, it's that classic situation. Idealism is high, but the schedule gets bogged down by the sheer complexity of engineering at the absolute frontier.
It's about those little delays that just add up on a project this massive.
Exactly. It highlights that even with a fail-fast approach and incredible engineers, the sheer scale and the newness of Starship's goals mean hitting aggressive schedules is just incredibly tough.
So slipping acknowledges the delays, but doesn't suggest they're giving up.
Not at all. The opposite would be on track, or maybe even ahead of schedule.
Which would be amazing for something like this.
Extremely rare, yes. So the article's phrasing here is quite clever, I think.
Yeah.
It distinguishes between that fixed, immovable ambition and the more flexible reality of the timeline.
That makes sense.
So by really understanding these words, proponent, spectacular, dummy, propellant, rosy, and slipping, you start to get a much richer appreciation for just how complex these ambitious projects like Starship really are. It's not just about the cool technology, is it? It's also about the company culture, the way they communicate, and the very language used to frame both progress and setbacks.
Absolutely. This specific vocabulary helps you grasp those underlying dynamics.
It does.
And each of these terms, seen through the lens of this article, kind of offers an aha moment, doesn't it? It shows how precise words can convey so much more than just a simple summary.
It's like a shortcut to being truly well-informed.
Yeah, it lets you quickly grasp the nuances, the different layers of meaning and expert analysis, and you can apply that skill to other complex stories you come across too.
Which sort of raises an important question for you, our listener, doesn't it? When you read about these groundbreaking innovations, how often do you actually pause and consider the subtle power of the words chosen? The words used to describe the journey, the challenges, the future.
That's a great point.
Perhaps paying closer attention to these kinds of spotlight words, like the ones we discussed today, can unlock even deeper insights into the big stories shaping our world.
Letting you see beyond just the headlines.
And into the underlying mechanics of progress, and maybe even ambition itself.